Today, it's my pleasure to welcome Kevin Palmieri to the Eye of Power podcast. Kevin is a lot more seasoned podcast host than I am at Next Level University podcast, and he has over 1,500 episodes. Been doing it a little while, and so I expect to learn a little bit of the ropes from him as I'm just starting in the podcast world, at least as it relates to the interview format. And he's got a lot of wisdom for a young man, and I'm looking forward to chopping it up as it relates to how we can move forward to be more of the full expression of ourselves as we possibly can. So I'd like to welcome Kevin to the show.
Welcome to the Eye of Power podcast. I'm your host, Tom Dardick. But this podcast is not about me. It's about you and your power. It's time to claim yours.
So, Kevin, one of the things that I really liked when I looked at your approach is your idea of consistency. And that's one of the things that is so important and so fleeting a lot of the times, because what happens? Life happens, right? So I'd like to start just by getting your viewpoint on that one thing, and then maybe you want to expand it out into your overall approach of how you got to where you are.
Yeah, well, first of all, Tom, thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much. I am someone who comes from a fitness background. So I am 34 as of this year, and I've been exercising since I was 16. I think somewhere along the lines, I realized if I'm more consistent than the people around me, I will probably get better results than the people around me. And then eventually it got to the place where we started a podcast, and I realized that a lot of people weren't taking it seriously. And my business partner said this to me. He said, Kev, if we're around in 5 years, if we're around in 10 years, we will be very, very successful, and we'll be impacting so many people because we'll be more consistent than other people. When we think of consistency, oftentimes I think we connect doing the same thing repeatedly, and that is consistency in a nutshell. But I think of consistency from a mood, an energy, the way you show up, your personality, how reliable you are. So consistency not only is an external thing that we do, but I also think it's an internal piece of who we are as humans if that's one of the goals we have.
So what are the things that either you had to fight through or people that you work with have to fight through to maintain both that inner consistency as well as the habit of consistency towards whatever pursuit you're finding yourself?
I would say juggling logic and emotion. The emotion of I'm being consistent, but I'm getting no results. And the logic of I've only been doing this for 3 months. I probably shouldn't get results yet. Expectations can set us up for success or failure. If you start something and you expect to be successful right off the bat and you're not, you might think you're doing something wrong, when in reality, you might be doing all the right things. We just haven't accounted enough time yet. So oftentimes that's what I'm trying to do is say, look, you're doing the right things and you're doing the right things in the right way. We probably just haven't done them for a long enough period of time yet. And I am very, very guilty of that in the beginning. I thought we would be way more successful, way faster. I just assumed it had to happen. I didn't really understand. I didn't really understand how this whole thing works out. So in the very beginning, it was a question of, well, how do we know we're doing the right things, even if we're not getting results? And then, I mean, that's a $1 billion question, depending on who you are. There's a lot of different ways you can go. You can look at what other people have done to achieve success. You can look at the growth of the results you're getting, although it's not the level of growth you want. So there's a lot of places you can dive into that, but I would say that's one of the biggest things. I know I'm doing the right thing. It seems like it, but why am I not getting any results yet?
So it sounds to me like one of the kernels of wisdom in there, Kevin, is trust the process in a way. In other words, do enough homework that you have a process that you know is a reliable path forward, and trust that process. It sounds like some of that anyway. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say if you're going to trust the process externally, you have to create a process internally.
Okay. I like that.
The people I've seen, I've worked with many people, and I've had the privilege to see a lot of people succeed, but I've also had the pain of seeing a lot of people stay stuck.
Yeah.
And usually the people that stay stuck, they do the same thing, but they have deluded themselves into thinking it's going to work. They're not looking at proof around them. It's more the delusion of, I know I'm doing the right thing and I know it's going to succeed when it should, versus somebody else saying, I believe I'm doing the right thing and I'll know it's working when I start to see some resemblance of success. But I think the internal piece is, am I doing the right things based on my personality? Am I doing the right things based on my strengths? Am I only doing the easy things because they feel like the right things? And I really think it's that juggling act of external success can happen without any self-awareness. It can. It's usually not sustainable. And you can become very, very self-aware without any external success. But I do think they feed each other really, really nicely if you're working on them separately to connect them together.
That makes sense. And the couple things I take from that, one is that your plan has to be your plan, right? It can't be somebody else's plan, because if it's somebody else's plan and you haven't internalized it, you're not going to be able to sustain it. And then the other thing I was thinking during that is, as it relates to sustainability, making sure that whatever the feedback loops that you're paying attention to are leading you towards progress rather than leading you off track. Because sometimes we can get feedback loops that take us away, right?
Yeah.
And one thing's for sure, right? We're either going forward or we're going back. And forward can sometimes feel like back. So it's not a linear path, but there's no standing still, right?
No. Unfortunately, that's just not the way the universe works. We're either if you're staying still, unfortunately, you're probably getting worse because time is continuing to move.
Yeah. So the other thing that, at least one of the things that I started out with my consultancy, I had a training company that dealt with how do you go about communicating, and we broke things down to fundamental, train for skill, and kind of like a gym. I was a little disillusioned because people would come, they would have good things happen, and then we wouldn't see them again. And I was like, what was going on here? And it's the same thing at a gym, right? It's not like the gym equipment doesn't work, or that if you don't go to an exercise thing, it's not going to pay dividends. There's other things going on. And what I came to realize, Kevin, is that the how doesn't matter unless you have the why, right? The why is the thing that matters. If you get your why, you're going to figure out the how. If you don't have your why, no how is really going to matter that much. So why I say that is, I wanted to steer us talking a little bit about purpose and intent and how we connect to a bigger picture in order to keep that consistency of habit. What's your view on that, on connecting to purpose?
I think it is probably the biggest reason why I am where I am today, and so privileged to have the quote unquote success we have. I think purpose it's almost like the one-liner for a restaurant or a business. Why is Apple such a strong business? Because it has a really, really meaningful purpose, and it's specific, and they stick to it. That's one of the reasons why they're a successful business. I would argue that a lot of other businesses that aren't successful, they just don't have purposes. And they're all over the place. They go to one shiny object to another shiny object. So just as a human, for most of us, our purpose will fall into, I want to help a unique person solve a unique problem in a unique way. It just tends to be that way. It's usually pretty simple. What I think we get caught up in is there's a drastic difference between our purpose and the vehicle to deliver the purpose. I think a lot of us get caught up. Just as an example, there's probably a lot of people out there that feel like their purpose is to improve the environment in some way, shape, or form.
Okay.
Maybe they have a really good idea for a product or service or whatever it may be. But where things get stuck is when they say, but how could I make that profitable? How could I make that sustainable? And how could I make that my life? And I think that's where things get really, really challenging. So what I've noticed over the last however many years is a lot of people who find their purpose are the people who have a lot of belief in themselves, because they'll locate their purpose, they'll identify a vehicle, and then they'll try to make it real. Where I've met so many amazing people who have amazing ideas, but they don't believe it's possible for them. They say, well, it would be so nice if I could do blank, but if you don't have the self-belief, I didn't in the beginning. I'm very blessed. My business partner believed in me way more than I believed in myself. I had a purpose. I felt like my purpose was to help people. I never thought my vehicle was going to be podcasting, speaking with my voice. I never thought that. That got introduced to me accidentally. I fell in love with it. I always felt like I kind of had a purpose. I never knew what the vehicle was. And in the beginning, Tom, transparently, I didn't have the belief to even attach myself to the vehicle. So anytime I talk about purpose, I always try to talk about the vehicle, because a lot of us, I think we have an idea of what our purpose is, but we have that R word, realistic. Well, it just doesn't. Being a podcaster, it doesn't really seem realistic. Or being a coach or having this company, it just doesn't seem realistic. So anytime I talk about purpose, I like to talk about vehicle as well.
I love that. The Eye of Power in community, what we talk about, I don't know if you can see it very well, but right here we call this quadrant over here the purpose quadrant. And that's as it relates to the model, it's action towards others. It's how we express ourselves into the world. And what we always say is we find our sense of purpose by finding that set of unique gifts. In other words, I might not be a 10 on any one thing. I might not be the smartest, the fastest, the strongest, the most but I'm going to have my pattern, my unique blend of attributes that is unique to me. And by identifying them and developing them, and then finding ways to put them to best service and use to others, that's what cultivates our purpose. So that is very much in line with what you're talking about, that belief in self, where you start with that inventory of, okay, look, what is it that I've been gifted with? Let me work on that. And you don't know when you start. Well, some people know and some people don't, is the truth of it. But I have a daughter who knew, and my son is still trying to find out. So, it's like, maybe it's luck of the draw, destiny, whatever you want to call it. But I think it's universal that we all need to take stock, develop those things. And we know what it is. It's what you think about. It's what you care about. It's not a mystery. It's not hidden, but we have to have the courage to go there and develop that. And I love what you said about the sustainability, where you can't just, I guess I could just say I care about the environment. I'm just going to start picking up trash, and I'm going to do that every day till forever. And maybe that would turn into something. It'd be an exploration. I'm not sure if it would turn into a business or not, but some playfulness and some exploration in finding that, because too many people don't have it.
Unfortunately, one of my favorite questions. It's a kind of a remix of a question that got asked a lot when it comes to finding purpose, finding your dream life, whatever it may be. If you didn't have to worry about $1, you don't have to worry about money. Money is not a thing you have to worry about, but you must do something in the service of others, humanity, the world, the environment, the next generation, whatever it is. You must do something in the service of others. What would it be? I like that frame because you can't say drinking margaritas on the beach, because that's not necessarily in the service of others. But even to your point, Tom, I think technology has made a lot of purpose in vehicles connect in ways that never happened before. When I was growing up, if you wanted to play video games professionally, people laughed at you. And parents were saying, you got to get out and you got to get some sun. There are people who make millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I don't know all of them, but I'm sure some of them are positive. And maybe their purpose is to inspire the younger generation through video games. So they found a way to make it work. And I think technology is going to lend more and more opportunity. Again, podcasting wasn't a thing 20 years ago.
Right.
So realistically, you and I wouldn't be able to do what we do today back then. So I think, technology makes it a little bit easier, but probably also harder on the other end because there's more options.
Right. My podcast today, in fact, I'm about to publish, is on that very thing. I use the healthcare industry in terms of making, how we make decisions and navigate such a dizzying array. And we get more and more options and more choices. And it's harder and harder for both the practitioners as well as patients and consumers of healthcare to know what the right thing is. And career and all the things you're pointing to there, and tying back to our talk about consistency, working on our decision-making acumen and getting good at as a skill at making decisions, I think in today's world is more and more important. Have you seen that in your work too, Kevin?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't know if you can make better decisions until you start making decisions. And I think that's, it's kind of the double-edged sword of, you can sit back and say, well, that's what I would have done. But until you do what you would have done, you can't really understand what you would do next time. So I'm of the firm belief now more than ever that action is the cure-all. If you believe in yourself a ton, you need action to humble yourself. If you believe in yourself very little, you need action to prove to yourself. And that action then becomes the recent and relevant proof for you to make better decisions next time. When we look back at regrets, why do we regret things? Oftentimes we regret things because we're looking back on old awareness from new awareness.
Right.
So now you have the opportunity never to make the same decision because your awareness is not the same as it used to be. I don't know if there's any way around that. You can learn and grow and evolve by reading and listening to podcasts and all that. But there's something about you signing your name on the line and saying, this is what I'm going to put my time, energy, effort, and focus into. I'm going to see what I get out of it. Next time I'll know, okay, it felt right. but I went into it wrong or it felt wrong and I tried to make it right. I don't know if there's any other way. Unfortunately, I think it's just you have to go mess up. Sometimes you get lucky when you make decisions, but I do believe action is the thing that helps our decisions land, and we can realize, okay, do we do the same thing next time, or what changes do we make, whatever the specifics are for you.
I think there's so much wisdom there. What stops us from taking action, right? It might be fear of failure, fear of looking bad, fear of whatever. And I had a conversation with somebody that's coming up on a podcast where he said it very concisely. He said, failure is our way of developing our judgment. And I think that's really a good framing because then you're not really failing, right? You're just learning. And so but you don't learn if you don't try. So you have to go out there, and this idea of not getting it right, where'd that come from? I mean, you didn't do anything right the first time you did anything in your life. Why would you think something new that you're trying would be any different?
The ego. I used to get stories told about me that when I was however old, I was an infant, but I would run around naked. Run around the beach naked.
Sure.
I don't know. I didn't know what was going on, but I'm not going to run around the beach naked anymore. That's weird. I think as we get older, our ego sometimes is correct, but also other times is incorrect in the things that it tries to protect us from. And if Tom doesn't like you, this interview is going to it might get weird and he might not even release it. You better show up in a certain way, or don't go up and ask that person for this, because if they reject you and then they tell their friends about you, you're going to be ostracized in the community. I think it's our ego's way of protecting us from things that it does not believe we are ready for yet. But to the whole through line of this, I'm convinced one of the reasons we're afraid of the things we're afraid of is because we've never really experienced them. Or we experienced them a long time ago and we haven't seen them with new awareness. If you ask someone, hey, what are your thoughts on oysters? I would immediately say to you, I don't like them. If you ask me next, have you ever had them? I would say, no, I've never had them, but I can tell I don't like them. I said the same thing about many things, Indian food and whatever, sushi, salmon. I love those things. I think fears are very similar. One of the reasons we are so against them is because we spend so much time being against them. Maybe if they happened through exposure therapy, we wouldn't be as against them because we'd say, oh, it's not as cold as I thought. It's not as scary as I thought, whatever it may be.
Two thoughts that emerge from what you shared there. One thing is that fear of failure, or that wherever it comes from, the ego, that's pretty deep seated, because built into our psychology is the fear of being rejected, right? So most of human history was in small groups, right? Yep. We didn't evolve in big cities and big groups. That's the exception, not the rule. And so we're wired to be connected to a small few. We see the same people our whole lives, and we have to be accepted by them. And if we're not, that's basically equal to death. And so that's where that fear of public speaking comes from, fear of being judged, fear of being ostracized, fear of being rejected. It's deep seated, and it's basically the same thing as fear of death, right? So, and I talked so long on that, I forgot what the other one was.
Par for the course, my friend. That's par for the course.
Yeah. But that action is the cure-all is such a strong takeaway, because that's information, right? And as a matter of fact, I was just talking about this, where if you're going to make a change, one of the first things you have to do is, or you don't have to do it, but one of the things I find very useful is if somebody keeps a log, right? In other words, they keep score over a period of time. And one of the major reasons there is, number one, you keep doing it, but number two, you create a database, right? You create something that you can look back. And that's what the other thing was, is you were talking about looking back in time and comparison between those two frameworks. And that's a tricky bit of business because it's hard to remember. So to get clear on it, we can use technology. Technology can be just paper and pen, or whatever it is, but something that helps augment our relatively fragile memories.
One of my favorite, I always suggest this on podcasts. Again, you and I are podcasters. We have a digital or audio recording of ourselves talking about what's going on in our life at a specific point in time. I always suggest to people who are watching or listening, take out your phone and record an audio message or a video message to yourself about what is going on in your life right now. Awesome. On a scale of 1 to 10, my relationship is this, my relationship with my body is this, my relationship with money, this is how I feel I'm doing financially, this is how I feel like I'm doing at work, this is just how my life is going, this is how my mental health is going. And then next time you are feeling either very low emotionally or very high emotionally, look back. And you will notice contrast. But I think contrast requires measurement. It's at this point, that's why the holidays are so weird for a lot of us. We're thinking about where we were this time last year, and it's either up or down. Usually, like we said, there really is no the same. It's time stamped. You could say 12 months ago, this is exactly where I was. This is where I am today. Go me. Or 12 months ago, I was way up here, and now I feel like I'm way down here. Okay, now what do I do with that? So that's always a habit. You can make it a habit, but a practice that I suggest.
I love that. That's fantastic. And again, that goes the theme that seems to be emerging, and maybe it's my fault because it was the first question I asked, but that idea of consistency and paying attention. So let's say you have somebody who is checking those boxes, right? They're working on toward whatever goal it might be, whether it be a physical goal like being in, I want a six pack or abs, or I just want to feel my best and look my best, or whatever else it might be. And they're doing the work. They're doing the consistency. What other factors do you notice, Kevin, that either speed them along or get them stuck, maybe off track? What are some of the things that you might, from your point of view, share?
Their community, 1000%. You can do the right things for the rest of your life, but if you're surrounded by the wrong people, it might offset. Unfortunately, climbing the mountain towards your own unique version of success is challenging enough, never mind when there's people holding you back. So that's one thing I have seen just drastically over the last 7 years of this journey. I would say self-awareness, understanding yourself at a deep enough level to realize why you actually want the things you want. We talked a little bit about why earlier. But I've worked with a lot of people who come to me and say, this is the result I want. And then when we dig into the why, it doesn't align with the lifestyle they want. It doesn't align with the stuff that actually motivates them. It was manufactured somewhere else. And they love the thought of the results it'll bring, but they do not want anything to do with the process or maintaining the results. So the self-awareness to say, okay, why do I actually want what I want? And is it directly going against the things that I value? So a young man one time said to me, I want to do what you guys are doing. And eventually I want to be an international speaker and I want to be all these things. And I said, okay, I love that. And I wish the best for you. Just a couple questions. Are you going to be the type of father that wants to get your kid off the bus and be at every one of their practices? And he says, absolutely. And I said, I don't know what it's going to be like to be where you want to be, but I can tell you right now, it'd be really hard for me to be at my kids' practices if I had them. And I am not 1/10 of the success, quote unquote, that you want to be. At least that awareness allows you to make a more intentional decision. I don't know what's worse, not thinking you want a certain level of success and never getting it, or thinking you want a level of success, getting it, and then realizing you didn't want it. I don't know. It's a paradox. I'm sure they'll make a movie on it someday, but yeah, that's another big one I see.
Those are great pearls of wisdom there, Kevin. By the way, I did not tell him nor pay him to say the thing about community. And the reason I say that is because the Eye of Power is a community. And the reason for that is for what you just said is this work it's not intellectual, right? If you want to get in shape, it's not a secret as to how to do it, right? If you want to change almost anything we want to pursue, be a great podcast or whatever, it's not ancient secret lore that you're going to have to somehow uncover and find something that nobody else knows. That's not how it works, right? What it is it's the emotionality, right? It's your relationship to yourself and others that allow you to either expend that energy along ways that mean something to you or not. And if you're in the dark, as you related to that self-awareness, and you're not clear, those are two pretty dark fates that unfortunately a lot of traps people fall into. And the only way out of that is really the courage for self-exploration right off the bat to get clear. And that's what the Eye of Power is really all about. Just to let you know, when you join, you are assigned a guide, and then shortly thereafter, you become a guide. So you're doing it with at least two other people that are everybody's rooting for everybody else, and you're not by yourself. And that sense of community, you have to be connected to other people. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
Same. I went to jujitsu today. I'm big into jujitsu. Awesome. And if I just imagine, number one, I go and I'm just doing it by myself. I'm not going to learn a bunch.
Nope.
Imagine if I'm doing it with people who don't know what they're talking about and they think jujitsu is the worst thing ever and they're afraid I'm going to hurt myself and they think it's stupid and they have all these negative thoughts on it. I'm blessed to go to a school where I am one of the worst people there. So I get a lot of time with people who are way ahead of me, which means I'm getting lessons that are just invaluable. And that just, again, speaks to the people around you. The old adage, you're the sum average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I don't know if there's anything in the self-improvement space that's as accurate as that. That might be the most accurate thing I've ever heard. So I can second everything you said.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I think we're running up on time then, Kevin. So I just wanted to make sure that we covered. Is there anything else you'd like to add as it relates to our discussion that we didn't get to yet? Is there?
Yeah, I mean, speaking on consistency, I would say the biggest difference between the person you are today and the person you want to be eventually is your habits. It's the stuff that you're doing consistently. It's the stuff that you're skipping consistently. That is the stuff. That is the stuff that's going to make or break the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years of your life. And then just the last thing would be one of my favorite questions going to community. Are the people in your life the best from your past or the best for your future? I've had a lot of people in my life that we used to party and used to do this and used to do this and used to do this. Nothing wrong with them. No judgment. I still have love for them, but that might not be aligned with the person that I desire to be in the future. And that's one of the questions that definitely rocked me the most the first time I ever asked, but it also gave me the most growth as well.
Well, you said you're 34 years old.
34 years old.
Yeah, for you to understand that, what you just said at your age, I'm very impressed with.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Because most people it takes a little longer than that to come. And that does, it either speeds or it slows your path, right?
Yep.
The associations we have. So kudos to you, my friend, on that. That's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words very much.
So if people want to hear more of those sage words, you have a podcast, right? Let's make sure we mention that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's called Next Level University. We do an episode every single day. We're on all the platforms, YouTube, all that. We just recorded our 1550th episode or 40th episode the other day. So we're happy to have you. We talk about all the stuff that we talked about today with Tom.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. I appreciate your time today.
My pleasure, my friend. I appreciate you back.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for being on the show today. Really enjoyed our talk, and I hope we end up getting together again sometime soon. The couple of the things that I'd like to highlight that Kevin shared with us today, the idea of juggling logic and emotion and managing expectations as it relates to our routines, our habits, our aspirations. I think that's a good thing to spend more time on. Degree of clarity that we can have around those things really can affect our level of frustration, because what is frustration, right? Frustration is just when reality and our expectations don't match. And so we don't have a dial to adjust reality too much, but we do have a dial to adjust our expectations. And so our frustrations and the things that we can are something we can control by paying attention to things like our emotion and how we're thinking things through, making sure our plans are compatible and sustainable for us as a person. I think that's a big one. The idea of connecting purpose to belief in self, that was something that I hadn't really thought of in precisely that way before. So I was very thankful that Kevin shared it in that way, where he was fortunate to have a business partner who saw more in him than he had seen in himself. And he was able to sort of take that leap of faith forward. And that's so important in our lives, to have other people around us that can bolster us, where in spots that we might even have a blind spot of our own, where we underestimate ourselves. And I think that's something that's close to universal. So that just underscores how important it is to be with other people. And of course, you mentioned that, and I was thankful for that. And that's the reason we structure the I Have Power community the way we do with our guide system. The idea that of action is the cure-all, we've been talking a good amount about that lately, and I think that's so critical. And speaking of action, one action he suggested, and I hope we all do this, is whenever you're listening to this podcast, I'd say any podcast that's designed to move you forward, is to take out your phone and take a quick log, take a quick inventory of where you are in the various aspects of your life. So he mentioned a few, but it could be finances, relationship, health, your spiritual health, how you're feeling as it relates to the bigger picture of things, perhaps a creativity or projects that you want to do. Perhaps it's physical space around you, your environment, that kind of thing. So whatever speaks to you, it can be 3 things or 10 things, but I think that's a very good habit. And of course, the idea of self-awareness, and that's something we're all about here. And that's a continual work in progress. So those are powerful themes, and I very much respect Kevin's unique voice on that. And I take inspiration from it, and I sure hope you do too. So thank you, Kevin, and thank you for listening and watching, and we'll see you soon.
This has been the Eye of Power podcast with Tom Dardick. I'd like to thank you for listening. I'd also like to thank my brother, Scott Dardick, for the music and his music production. If you'd like to reach me, simply email Tom at dardickcommunications.com.